Welcome to No Password Required. I'm your host, Jack Clabby, a cybersecurity attorney at Carlton Fields, PA. And with me, as always,
I'm Kaylee Melton, the Director of Community Programs and Events for the Cognitive Security Institute and the Bob Ross of InfoSec.
We just finished a great conversation with Philipp Leo. Philipp is a consultant to a number of authorities. He's part of Europol's network of experts in data protection and cybercrime, and he's got a long history in working with the Swiss military. So we just finished our conversation with Philipp. Kaylee, what stood out to you the most?
I really appreciated Philipp's focus on resilience over detailed plans because, as we all know, the future doesn't tend to follow scripts.
Yeah, he's got a great perspective too on Switzerland and what makes it different. He describes it as he describes Europe as a whole as a regulatory superpower, and he talks a little bit about the tension between that and some of the innovation that might be needed to combat sort of growing and new cyber threat. He does a really great job too of situating Switzerland in the middle of that. So you've heard a bit about what Kaylee and I took away from the discussion, and now let's hear what Philipp has to say.
This is No Password Required, a Cyber Florida podcast presented by ThreatLocker.
All right, well, welcome back. We're here with Philipp Leo. Philipp, thanks so much for joining us on the No Password Required podcast.
Hi. Great to join.
Philipp, your bio reads, at least on LinkedIn, like it's three different people. You've had quite a bit of experience. You've got experience as a military officer, a UN diplomat, and a cyber advisor and an academic. How did that combination come together?
The thing is that I get bored easily. I've never been a believer in linear careers, and it's curiosity which has driven me most. And I made many of my decisions because I was curious. I was always following interesting problems rather than predefined career steps. And military was also very important for me. It taught me leadership under pressure. I was 2 years at the Korean border in the DMZ between North and South Korea. I had a front row seat to geopolitics and international security. Cyber exposed me also to the intersection of technology, business and security. And academia allows me to step back and challenge assumptions. On the surface, this looks like very different worlds, but for me, everything comes together. In reality, all revolves around the same questions. How do leaders make decisions under uncertainty? How do organizations respond to crisis? What creates resilience? And what is the ability, or what ability is most important when it matters most? Today, I benefit most of being able to solve such problems and have different perspective on such issues. I think
Philipp, I got to ask, what brought you to the border in Korea? What was the role that brought you there, and what kind of work did you do? If you can tell us.
I got bored. I worked for a Swiss bank, and I really didn't like it. So I really needed a way to get out of that, and I was really lucky. I had really a miserable day, and then I got a phone call that if I would like to go to Korea. And I could even take my family with me. So I was already there. I was a military officer. And I did all the courses which were needed to do that, especially the UN Observer certification. And so I was on the list, and I was really lucky. It was really on the right moment that they called my name to go there. And we had a fantastic time there, but it's a very, very bizarre place, especially in North and South Korea.
Were you doing cyber work there at all, or was it more you observe like UN observer work where you're just making sure that the peace stays?
It was not about cyber, but also already then, it's a couple of years ago, that cyber was already important, but I was more there in a diplomatic role.
Got it. Okay. And we know you wear several hats professionally. want to just kind of take them one at a time. Can we start with the Leo and Muhly Cyber Advisory? What kind of work do you do now in the Cyber Advisory? What kind of work are you typically working on?
It's a company I founded, Cyber Advisory, Leo Muhly Cyber Advisory. It's a strategic advisory firm, and we are specialized in cyber risk, resilience, and geopolitics. And we focus on executive boards and also government leaders to understand how cyber threats, geopolitical developments, and emerging technologies affect their organizations, and how to navigate an increasingly complex world, which is not easy nowadays.
And all right, so when you walk into a client's boardroom, what's the most dangerous misconception that executives have about cyber risk?
I think there are three things. They think cyber risk is primarily a technology problem. In reality, it quickly becomes a leadership, business, and decision-making problem. They also believe that cyber risk can be delegated, but cyber risk is a corporate risk, and it needs to be managed at that level. Technology and security teams plays a critical role, but when the shit hits the fan, I think it's important that leadership knows what they do. And the third one is that many companies, they assume they are not an attractive target. Yeah. And this is a misconception. They think they are too small, too specialized, or simply not interesting enough. But most attackers don't care. And so they can often get focused on that. Also, they get also a victim of an attack.
I understand that you've built a tabletop exercise intended to train executives, to let them experience what a ransomware attack might be like. What does leadership teams often get wrong the first time they play through?
It's not a classical tabletop exercise in the traditional sense. We call it a life simulation with an active red team. So whatever decision they make, we have a solution for that. So usually you can't win the exercise, but it's about training. It's not about winning. So every decision has consequences, and the environment adapts and reacts. And the biggest surprise is usually that such a cyber crisis is not a technical crisis. And what we also realize that, especially if you have a cyber crisis team, they significantly improved over the last couple of years. But we had to realize that at the moment, the cyber crisis teams are not the weakest link anymore. It's more the leadership. So the crisis teams, they usually train. They train for such a case, and then they usually report to this kind of execution or this leadership on management boards. And they usually don't train. And at that situation, usually they make decisions without understanding what they are deciding on. So this is what we have realized is, and we also offer that, and we train, we already have, when we do crisis simulations, we usually do one part with the cyber crisis team, and then we do the same thing with the leadership board. And the results are fantastic. Having both sides working on the same topic or same crisis, you get way better results than only having a crisis team working on the issue and having a kind of a management team making decisions at the end, which they don't understand.
Wait, so the better results came when both teams participated, when the trained cyber squad and the sort of operations and leadership team participated?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
So it usually it's really hard to get them on. We don't have them at the same table because they're two different boards. So, but having that at the same time training, having them for the training, it's seldom. But we can also do it that we have the crisis team, we do the exercise, and then we have the leadership team, which working on the same topic. And we are kind of the intermediary team between that. And that's how we work with these teams. Because the information they usually have, it's not the same. And this is the most important thing. It's about competencies, information, and about making decision and working together, collaboration.
I like the idea of a game you can't win as a way of stressing and testing things. That was I don't know if you're familiar with Star Trek, or that was the last test of the Starfleet Academy in the made up world of Star Trek is the Kobayashi Maru test, which is unwinnable. And the idea is to see how the idea is to,
I will check that out.
The Kobayashi, it's designed to see, again, in this fictional world, how a potential Starfleet spaceship captain will perform in a losing scenario. So what you're designing sounds like that, the Kobayashi Maru test for executive teams.
I will look at it. I really will look at it.
So sticking with the boardroom, you've surveyed 23 CISOs and found 68% of them said that a lack of leadership support was the biggest obstacle they face to cyber crisis training, even though those are the same leaders who are saying it's a high priority. What is driving that gap?
I think it's what we realized that I think it's also a cultural thing. This survey was mostly about the European CISOs. Mm-hmm. And we realized that CISOs are the poster childs. They are pushed into the front. And it's kind of, hey, we have a CISO. He's really aware and he does everything to protect the company. But at the end, it's just a delegation. And we realized that if you have an IT team on one side of the building, the CISO is mostly on the other side of the building or even in another building to make sure he's not close to the operation. So we realized that most companies have a CISO, but they usually don't have the power to make decisions or don't have the budget, but still are responsible and accountable for whatever happens. And this we see as a misconception, that they don't have the access to the board usually or not directly, and they just kind of poster child.
So, Philipp, in terms of making a company a target, one of the things that I know you've argued before is that buying cyber insurance can actually make a company a more precisely targeted victim. Can you explain a little bit about that view?
I think there are different sides. The one side is if you get an insurance company, it makes you feel safer. And at the end, having insurance doesn't make you safe. And it's changing over the last couple of years, especially here in Europe. Many companies realize that cyber insurances it doesn't help much. It's a bit different in the US. 3 weeks ago, I've been in the US and I realized that it's seen differently. But here in Central Europe, many companies have cyber insurances only to tick the box because they have to have one. There's kind of regulations that they need one, but many companies, especially bank and insurances, they only have it to tick the box. So because they realized is when the crisis is over, we take care of the insurances or we go after the insurance. But it's a couple of years ago, there were kind of insurances was like a problem solver, and that never really happened. It got really issues. And especially and there were also cases like the Zurich Mondelez case, where Zurich realized they couldn't handle that anymore. The insurance was way too cheap for that, what the kind of the risk was. And so they used the act of war. So they claimed that the attack was way bigger than cybercriminals could have done it. So it's kind of seen as an act of war. And why act of war is not covered in the small print? So that's what they used. But there's another other view is that if some attackers or some cybercriminals get into your network and they find the insurance policy, and that happened, they will read it exactly. And they will tell you, hey, don't worry. It's exactly the price which is covered by the insurance. So pay the ransom and you have no issues. Don't waste your and our time. We know that it's 50 millions or 20 millions which is covered. Just go for it. We know it's covered. And this is a game changer during negotiations. Is that then they were really in your network and they studied your documents, and that really happened.
Wow.
In the U.S. cyber, if you have two companies that are roughly the same size, one has an insurance policy for cyber and one doesn't. The first company that has the insurance policy will have gone through some remedial underwriting and tends to have some structure around their response. And so the outcome would typically be a better one than a company without an insurance policy who's never done that. Mm-hmm. And here, I mean, at least what we've seen, right, is the insurance policy does give you access to experts. It gives you access to an incident response team of third parties, which can really help. But to me, it's really the difference between those two companies is there was some sort of discipline around the incident response team that had to be put in place in order to get the insurance. So I don't know if it was the insurance helping in a response or it was the discipline needed to sign up for it in the first place leads to better outcomes.
Not here in Europe. We have seen that it was kind of a promise, but it never really worked out. Yeah. We even had cases here, but this changed, is that insurance companies were about that you should pay because it was cheaper for the insurance company, and the company didn't want to pay. So we had such issues.
Wow.
That the insurance company was forcing the company into actions which they didn't want to do. We have a lot of companies here in Switzerland which they really refuse of paying, but especially in Switzerland, many officers, we have CEOs are often officers also in the Swiss Armed Forces. So is that they are totally against of paying. But if you speak with them in a more quieter place or just with one each other, they tell you that it would have been way cheaper if they would have paid, but they couldn't.
Wait, they can't pay because they're also, in addition to having their private sector job, they're also officers in the military, and so they're restricted in that way.
It's more about a statement. It's about that you are not willing to pay.
Yeah. Okay.
But from the economic side, often it would be way cheaper. And we had a couple of weeks ago, last year, even a company of the Swiss government of the armed forces, even they paid. So law enforcement and the government was always telling us, don't pay. You don't know if you get the documents back or you get everything back, and you support cyber criminals. And last year, a company which belongs to the government, they paid. So
most U.S. states don't have rules on it, but Florida, where we record the podcast from, has a statute on the books that says a municipal government or state government entity may not pay. They actually have barred the payment of a ransom by government, but I think it's the only state. North Carolina may have a similar one, but of the 50 states, I think Florida and maybe North Carolina are the only two that have a full-on bar for payment. I don't think there's enough data to see whether it's impacted incidents of ransomware against government entities, but it's a full stop. You can't pay. We'll see.
But I think in the U.S., there's also two entities, at least I know. It's the FBI, which is looking carefully if you pay or not. And the other one, especially which is threatening also other companies globally, is OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control. So nearly all cyber criminals are on that list. So you should, at least out of your perspective, you shouldn't pay because you support terrorism, and there are sanctions.
Yeah, so for our listeners who may not be familiar, the OFAC is a department of the Treasury that maintains a list or has access to a list of known terrorists, right? Generally, and the rule is that if you're going to make a payment, you have to, it's strict liability, right? So if you end up making a payment to a terrorist who's on that list, you're in trouble, regardless of whether you knew. So there's now companies in the U.S. that you can hire if you want to pay a ransom, who will check the list for you to see if the person you're paying is on that list, and will give you a certificate to say, no, you're okay, you're good to pay. And so the insurance company will connect you with these vendors who will do that search of the OFAC list for you. So
Wow.
Yeah, it's there's always anytime there's a barrier to payment, there'll be a vendor who will emerge to allow you to run that.
It's also interesting that many Swiss banks, if they hear the word OFAC, they are really concerned.
Mm.
We had one crisis simulation with 3 rounds. Each round means 1 day. And after the second day or second round, they said, okay, we pay. It's cheaper for us. So finish the exercise, we decided to pay. It was the board. And said, oh, hey, we have a third round. What will come now? We've decided we pay. We can stop now. I said, no, just wait. We have a third round. And then we came up with OFAC, so that it's okay. Because that group we were simulating, this group is on the list. And he was really looking at me. I said, wow, I didn't expect that. But okay, now on the third round.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, you mentioned the military a little bit before, but I want to ask you about that. So one of the things you're doing is you're training the next generation of Swiss cyber warfare specialists.
Correct.
What do they get wrong when they arrive? What is that like? Yeah.
The most important thing is it's not their fault. It's about how governments or the armed forces train young individuals. So when we have the training, it's the boot camp. We are one of the only countries in Europe who does that. Israel does it, the IDF. But in Europe, we are the only one. We really select young professionals in that field, and we train them. But we train them the way a government does it. It's about ethics. It's about blue force. It's about sticking to the game rules. And when they come to me, they have to realize that there's an acronym: BAD. Brutal, aggressive, dynamic. And I show them how other organizations, which are usually not, which are on the other side, they don't care. They don't have ethics. They don't follow rules. They don't follow procedures. And our guys don't have to be that way, but they have to realize and to understand that they have on the other side, they have maybe an actor on the other side which doesn't care. There are no rules, and they have to understand that. This is really interesting to train them in that field, especially if the first thing is, but we don't do that. Yeah, but the others do. And so this is nearly the first answer I always hear, but it's our moral compass doesn't allow that, or it's not ethical. It's out of the rules we have. Yeah, but you have to realize the others don't care, and this is really important. And so that's as part of my educational part. I do opposition force and social engineering.
I mean, do you think that nation states have what it takes to beat this cyber threat? I mean, or is given the tactics that the bad guys are operating from, I mean, are the defenders going to just be always outpaced?
I think while we had rule-based order and the peace dividend, there was a chance of beating the cyber criminals. But as everything changed, it's about power. Everything is about power at the moment, and civilizations are clashing. I think it's getting way, way harder because there is not much collaboration. And so even if we know who's on the other side, and it's not a false flag operation, it's really hard to go after them because you don't have the means. And you don't even have to go Europe and Russia or Asia. It's even closer. It's when I speak to the police, they tell me is that even if you ask for assistance officially, the east side of Vienna, you don't have to do it anymore. And that's still Europe. It's European community. East side of Vienna is still a European community. But the rules, they are working differently. There are other ways to do it, but officially asking for juridical assistance, nobody cares within European community. So it makes it, you don't even have to cross the borders. It's only, you can stay in Europe, and it doesn't work that way we would expect in a kind of rule-based order.
Wow. I wonder if we're going to get to a place where it's like the old days of pirates, where you have like governments that are issuing letters of marque or like commissioning private contractors to just kind of go and do offensive cyber. And if you come back with certain goals, we'll give you gold or something like that, right? You need just asymmetrical responses.
We have that. I think this is something we have to realize, that when we kind of analyze countries, it's about their doctrines. And especially on the governmental side, you have to realize, are they working with contractors? And if they have contractors, it's really about the pirates. It's about, sometimes they are just ignored, or sometimes they are protected, but it's really how the pirate system in the Caribbean Sea worked. We are back to that stage.
So from inside Europol's expert network, what are you seeing at the European level that most businesses aren't paying attention to yet?
I think it's the same thing with businesses. They underestimate the strategic competition, that it's not only about technology, it's also about politics. And we are, especially in Europe, we are also kind of limiting ourselves. Europe has become a regulatory superpower. We are exceptionally good at creating rules, standards, and frameworks. But the challenge is not about only regulations. It's also about technological leadership. Rules doesn't create innovation. It does not create strategic autonomy. While Europe is debating regulation, other regions are investing heavily in artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, cyber capabilities, semiconductors, and digital infrastructures. We don't. We invest in regulations. My concern is that we risk confusing regulation with competitiveness. And we have to be really, really careful. It really worries me that Europe has become a regulatory superpower at a time where technological power is increasingly shaping economic power and also military power, and with that, geopolitical influence. That I'm a bit afraid we could fall back. We could fall behind.
In a connected thought, since Switzerland sits at the center of global finance and international institutions, yet remains neutral, how does that affect its cyber threat profile specifically?
I think it's not only about cyber, it's also in the diplomatic field or in politics, is that everyone likes Switzerland, but nobody respects us. And that makes it a bit complicated. So everyone likes us and we're not really respected, means that we also, for foreign actors, we're a good training ground. So you can train with our infrastructure, and even if you catch you, nothing really happens. So it's maybe we write a letter, please stop, you shouldn't do that. Or we call the UN and nothing happens. This is why it's that we are also really dependent on the international law, because international law has always been the kind of the tool of the small countries. But especially last couple of months or years, where international humanitarian law or international law has been ignored widely, it's not easy for small countries like ours.
All right, well, we're going to take a short break now. And when we return, Philipp will go through our lifestyle polygraph. Stay with us.
You're listening to the No Password Required podcast. We cover cybersecurity and a lot of other stuff.
Welcome back. As many of you know, the Lifestyle Polygraph is a test used by the federal government to determine if a person is worthy of learning some of our nation's most important secrets. Here, we use this technique for slightly lower stakes. to determine whether our guest can join our fantasy cybersecurity squad. Philip, are you ready for the lifestyle polygraph?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's go. Number 1, what do you read that has nothing to do with cybersecurity?
Well, there's one book which I really, really love, and I have read it at least 3 times. It's the book Endurance. It's about Sir Ernest Shackleton and the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition. It's about when his ship got trapped in the Antarctic. And Shackleton and his crew had to survive nearly 2 years in a crazy environment, only of ice and water. And this is such a powerful book. And it's not even written by him. It's only written on his memoirs and notes he has taken. It's it's of Alfred Lansing, and it's really a book I really love. It's something I usually, even having read it twice or 3 times, it's when I start, I have to be careful. I can't start without getting to the whole book.
Wow.
It's so much about leadership and resilience, adaptability, and maintaining morale during crisis. This is a fantastic book about leadership, which impresses me really, really much. And there's an interesting saying which I found out after I read the book is that if you want to be first, go with Amundsen. If you want to be famous, go with Scott. But if you ever want to come back alive, go with Shackleton.
I've heard those trips described as essentially the equivalent of going to Mars today, right? It was so crazy to get on a boat and go to the north like that. And you wouldn't, and the people would leave and maybe they'd come back in a year, maybe they'd come back in 2 years, maybe they wouldn't come back. It was the equivalent of going to the moon or something.
Absolutely. That's why this book is so fantastic. It's one person was taking care of the whole crew, and 2 years in a harsh environment, which is like on Mars, it's incredible. And the risk he took to save his people, and even when he was in safety, he made everything to get his people out of Elephant Island. It's really interesting. And the thing is, what happened also was for First World War. So it was really hard to get the money to get his people out there. So This is an incredible person who took accountability really, really serious.
Awesome. Number 2, you are celebrating a win with friends. You're buying the first round. What is your go-to and what are you celebrating?
So what most people would say, they would go for a single malt, but it's not true. You told me it should be authentic. So it's a Campari Red Bull. It's not so sophisticated, but it always works, especially in summertime.
Yeah.
It's nothing a bartender would recommend. Many bars here in Europe don't even serve Red Bull because they think they shouldn't. But it has been my go-to for years. I also worked for Red Bull quite a while ago, and so I sticked with that. Campari Red Bull, this is my famous or my most celebrated drink. And so for a promotion or an award, I think what we would celebrate is that if we had tackled as a team a difficult problem and came out stronger on the other side, this is something I would celebrate with the team. It's about under pressure. Yeah, diamonds exist because of pressure, and a good team gets bonded together through working together under pressure, and this is something I would really celebrate. With the
I don't know if I heard you right. Is it vodka Red Bull? What's the mix with the Red Bull?
Campari.
Campari and Red Bull. Okay.
The red Italian bitter.
Yes. Okay. Yep. I have it in my summer my summer drink cabinet. Right. I've got it. So I can try this. Okay.
You have to. Campari Red Bull is a fantastic summer drink, and it's really refreshing. And the special thing is, it doesn't taste after Red Bull after that, and it doesn't taste like Campari. So it gets really something new, which is incredible good. If you like bitters.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I've been doing a lot of Negronis, right? So that's
So we are on the same track.
similar flavor profile.
And
All
it's
right, good.
a more modern version of the Negroni.
I like it. Oh, wonderful.
All right. Question number 3. You've spent a career helping other people prepare for worst case scenarios. How do you personally prepare for uncertainty?
I had to learn that uncertainty is normal. It's not my goal to predict every possible future. It would be way too complicated, and it doesn't work. My goal is to build the ability to adapt when it's really needed. So to adapt, keeping up the ability when you get surprised. I don't focus, or I focus less on detailed plans, more on resilience. So I base on capabilities, on strong relationships, on continuous learning. That's why I finished my last degree 6 weeks ago at the Bundeswehr University of Munich. So that's one more degree to collect. And it's really about continuous learning, but also not only the brain, but also your body. Physical and mental fitness is really, really important. It's the ability to make decisions with complete information under pressure. You have to be ready for the unexpected. So I spent enough time studying crisis to know that future doesn't follow scripts. So I prepare myself and my team to be able to adapt. Whatever happens, we find a solution with creativity and with all the training we did before.
Philip, do you if you know it's going to rain, do you carry an umbrella or do you judge people who carry umbrellas? Where do you fall out on that side of things?
The thing is, I have always an umbrella with me, but it's a super small, super sturdy, really small. It's only 3 ounces, so
wow.
It's so small, and it's really, really works. It's super expensive, but it's so small that I always have one with me in my bag because it's so small and nobody sees it.
Yeah.
So I don't get judged that I have an umbrella because nobody realizes that I have. And if you get caught by rain, stay close to me. I have an umbrella.
Amazing.
Is that a Swiss level of preparation? Because I know the Swiss are ready for everything, right? You guys always have, everybody has military service. You all know how to handle weapons, right? I mean, maybe is that part of your Swiss identity, or is that you? Yeah,
I think it's something which you find through the officers' corps is that we get, as a small country, we can't rely only on power because we don't have it. We are too small. And I think it's a different approach if you go to officer school, and how you are trained as an officer it's most likely a bit different. It's more about finding solutions, whatever encounters, whatever encounter you have, or what problem strikes you it's about that way. And I think many of my officers, colleagues, or comrades think the same way.
Question number 4. You studied art history at the University of Zurich, which is not something many people in your field can say. Is there a piece of art or a movement of art that means something to you that you think deserves more attention than it gets?
Yes, I have. There's one picture which I think it's a picture which it's really close to me, and it's very inspiring. The Raft of the Medusa. It's a masterpiece of the romantic period, and you see people struggling because there's a ship in a storm, and it's, for me, I see more than, also because I'm trained to read pictures and describe them. It's more, it comes everything together. It's about leadership, failure, survival, and human behavior under extreme stress. And that's why I really like this picture. It shows what happens when a system fails, when leadership breaks down, and people are forced to confront uncertainty. So someone who studies crisis and resilience I find this old picture remarkably contemporary.
I love that. Okay, last question.
Sure.
You've lived across 3 different continents. What's the best place to live, and where is the best place to disappear for a weekend?
I spend a lot of time thinking about complexity, crisis, and uncertainty. Every now and then, disappearing into a cabin in the Alps, it's a good reminder that not everything in life needs to be connected.
Yeah, I love that. So
I've heard that people in Zurich in the summer can go swimming in like the lakes, like even on their lunch break. Is that true? Or,
wow.
And this as kind of a sport many people do is that we have rivers. One river is going out of the Lake of Zurich through the city, and many people which live outside of Zurich as they are commuting, they come by train to the city and go home swimming in the river.
What?
Yeah,
That's
this is
awesome.
Because many of the bigger cities are really, really close to the limit, which is the river, and people just go and they get by the flow from the river and go home to the next bigger city, and from there maybe they take the bus to go home, or maybe they have the car there. But in the morning they come by train or by bus, and they go home with the river.
Oh, that's
Wow.
great. What a wonderful tradition.
That's amazing. So, Jack, what do you think? Does Philip have what it takes to join our fantasy cybersecurity squad?
Yes, Philip, you have passed our made-up test, but you've passed it.
That's great. Fantastic.
You can be our geopolitical advisor to our fantasy cybersecurity squad here at No Password Required. Philip, thank you for joining us. If our listeners want to learn more about what you do or want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to connect?
I think the best way to connect is LinkedIn. So this is a platform which is updated regularly, and there you find everything about me, because this is the kind of most updated social platform I use.
Well,
Philipp
thank you,
Leo
Philip.
on LinkedIn. You will find me.
Great. That brings us to the end of the show. Thank you all for listening. For the entire No Password Required team, I'm Jack Clabby, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for listening to the No Password Required podcast, presented by ThreatLocker. No Password Required is produced by Cyber Florida, and a special shout out goes to our friends at Carlton Fields and Reality Shift. For more content, follow us on social media at NoPasswordPod, and visit our website at cyberflorida.org/pod.